Today, Premier Paul Lennon told Parliament he was unaware of the dire financial position in the lead-up to the March state election, when his government was talking up the success of Spirit 3. Jocelyn Nettlefold reports.
Keep the spirit running! Keep the spirit running!
Passengers arriving on Spirit 3 in Sydney are being urged to show their support for the ferry service, which now appears doomed. 3 years ago, Tasmanian Treasury officials told the government it would be financial madness to buy a $105 million ferry and run it between Sydney and the island state. But buoyed by the success of 2 ferries already plying Bass Strait from Melbourne, the Tasmanian Premier, the late Jim Bacon, ignored Treasury's advice.
Sydney represents a huge, largely untapped market for the state, and now is the time to act, to really penetrate into that market.
Jim was caught up in the euphoria of a tourism boom. The ferries were running well. We had this increase of about 30 to 40,000 in patronage, and so let's have a third ferry.
As far as the industry was concerned, was a step too far too soon.
The glossy and glamorous Spirit 3 dream has disintegrated into a financial nightmare for Tasmanian taxpayers. Within months, it became clear the ship was in strife. The state-owned shipping corporation TT Line wanted to get rid of it. It's been losing millions every year. Despite slashing the price of fares, cheap air travel has continued to lure passengers away from the ferry, and the cost of fuel has almost doubled.
Although we couldn't predict the impact of cut airline fares and so on, if you took the trend passengers through there rather than the boom level passengers, you lost about 43,000 passengers, so there was never a justification for a third ferry.
Head of the School of Economics at the University of Tasmania, Dr. Bruce Felmingham, says Spirit 3 never really had much hope.
Well, Treasury was saying some pretty damning things. It was saying that the non-viability was outrageous.
TT Line last year recorded losses of $79 million and is bracing itself to lose another $40 million this year. Chairman Denis Rogers says it could force the company into insolvency within a year, as the Melbourne ferries are now also underperforming.
There has to either be an increase in funding, or there is no alternative but to sell Spirit 3.
Ferry workers in the tourism industry lobbied the Lennon government last year to end mounting uncertainty about Spirit 3's future. A year out from an election, it delivered a $115 million rescue package designed to keep the Sydney ferry afloat.
It's going to cost money, a lot of it. But if we succeed, it will be an investment in our future.
Premier Lennon justified the lifeline on the economic spin-offs that would be created by a projected 300,000 passengers in the next 3 years. As shareholder minister, he denied he had a case to answer.
Don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous.
I think he probably had one eye to this year's election.
Sandy Galbraith, who edits the shipping industry newspaper Lloyd's List, says the government should have cut its losses last year.
Premier Paul Lennon had an ideal opportunity to get out then, and had he done so, he could have had a staged withdrawal from the market.
Paul Lennon claims he knew nothing about TT Line's dire situation before the March state election, which has raised questions about governance, especially after the Auditor-General recommended better communication between government and the board. Apart from a meeting earlier this month, the last formal government update from TT Line, says the Premier, was back in December.
Election was called in February, Mr Speaker, and what the opposition leader seems to be suggesting now is that the government should have broken with the caretaker conventions and ordered the TT Line and other companies to come and meet with the government.
According to the Department of Premier and Cabinet, those conventions do actually allow the exchange of information at ministerial discretion. Opposition parties want to know how the minister responsible for TT Line had updated good news to announce about Spirit 3 just days before the election was called.
The 14 extra journeys by the Spirit of Tasmania III is good for Tasmania. It means more people are coming to the state.
The fate of Spirit 3 will be publicly known after a cabinet meeting on Monday. Tickets are only guaranteed until August. The ferry's rough and expensive journey, says Sandy Galbraith, should encourage the government to get out of the shipping business altogether.
TT Line could be very easily privatised. Having lost the money that they have, the Tasmanian government could effectively see the ferry service moving from the debit side of the ledger to the credit side, and that would be good news for Tasmania.
Jocelyn Nettlefold with that report. The